Welcome to How Preschool Teachers Do It.
This is Alison Kentos. I am an early childhood educator.
And this is Cindy Tarabush. I am an early childhood consultant.
This podcast is for parents and early childhood professionals.
Let our experience and research-based knowledge become your guide. Welcome back, preschool peeps.
Hi, peeps.
The timing of the release of this episode seems like the perfect time to talk to people who may be in their first year of teaching. We hope you found the podcast if this is your first year. If this is not your first year and you feel like, oh, I know this person in their first year of teaching, this might be beneficial, we hope you will share this episode with them.
Yes. But I also feel like the tips might be good for people who are older too, that have been in the field maybe a little bit too. It's always good for
or more seasoned instead of older.
Seasoned. I said, I couldn't think of the right word, and I was like, Allison, you're one of those people. So you just insulted yourself. But that's okay.
You know, I went from, I think in the course of my career, I went from calling it like older to veterans, but that really belongs to military.
I like to say,
so I've taken on this experience, the more experienced among us, or the more seasoned. So I think seasoned or experienced. If you are a more seasoned or experienced teacher, this might also apply to you. So don't go anywhere. We have several pieces of advice that may help you get through the first year. And I know that first year is filled with the potential for catching germs, first year itis, as some of us call it, where you may catch germs, but that's not what we're going to focus on in this episode, because after having been through the pandemic, I feel like you know what to do about germs. I don't have to tell you to wash your hands for 20 seconds. Yes. Like I don't have to tell you this. Though it's not surprising if you were to get sick in your first year, right, and you've been being exposed to a lot more people and stuff. Yeah. That said, let's go on to the more philosophical and practical, all at the same time, advice. Yes. So the first piece of advice is to be able to define teacher you versus personal life you. Who are you as a teacher? What are your values? What is your philosophy? What do you believe in for teaching young children? And how do you see yourself as a teacher? What are the traits and values in your role? So let's give, Allison, if we can give some examples of that. You know, as a teacher, you're on the spot. Yeah. No, I'll start maybe. As a teacher, one of my traits, I think, one of my traits is, I'm organized when it comes to planning for my class. I write plans based on the individual children in front of me. And, I respect everybody's culture, everybody's background, everybody's perception of things. So that's like personal life me as well.
Yes. Whereas I'm not like that organized in personal life or teaching life. My teaching, I'm more like sometimes I plan. I'm not saying I don't plan, but I also sometimes I'm like, let's throw that plan right out the window. We're going to do something.
Oh, I do that too.
Because so like I'm very much
flexible.
Like
we could say flexible is one of the traits.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I am very much a relationship-based teacher. And I wouldn't say I'm necessarily a relationship-based person in my personal life, because I'm pretty introverted in my personal life. Not that I don't have friends, but right. In my teaching life, like I work very hard to get to know every single student. I get to know what makes them tick, what they're interested in, what can I do when they're upset or sad. Like I try to talk to them like they're my friends sometimes, and like, so like I try to really work hard at that, because I feel like that's very, very important, because I feel like if they have a relationship with me, then everything else will kind of fall into place and the teaching kind of comes more naturally, And I also feel like if they're going through some sort of emotional thing, having that relationship really, really helps. So I feel like that's kind of like my philosophy. And I also like to just teach from a place of like wonder and inquiry, where I'm like, any question that you have might turn into a really long lesson, and that's just, and they're interested in that kind of stuff. And some teachers aren't like that. They like to have it planned weeks in advance. And I'm just not that person,
No, I can also be inquiry based. I think, to say I'm an inquiry based teacher, that's who I am, is a great way to define, or even like you were saying, I think when I'm teaching, I'm extroverted, but in my real personal life, I'm very much introverted. I'm very much introverted.
Exactly.
So there's a difference.
That's very,
yeah.
Yes. Because when I teach, I'm very loud sometimes. I'm very boisterous. In my personal life, absolutely not. Like I am not like that at all, which is weird because I talk on this podcast like nothing's the matter, but like in my personal life, I'm kind of quieter. I'm one that I don't mind being alone, like it doesn't bother me. I do everything on my own. Like I don't need people to be around me, so like to have like this like relationship based like theory at school is like, wait, why? Because you kind of like are like alone at home and you're fine with it, so like, but that's who I am as a person.
As a teacher.
And I know and as a and I could separate the two. I can do I could have this personality at school, which can be quite exhausting because I'm more introverted, but I can do it and still do my home life, which is a little different, and I can balance the two out.
I think I'm sillier. As a teacher than I am in my home life too. So I think, that sort of thing, you have to know, how do you view education, and really notice who you are in both places, because you can adjust your behavior. Here's another one.
Yes.
And tell me what you think of this. You are going to make mistakes in your first year of teaching. You're going to make mistakes always, but in your first year of teaching, you are deeply learning alongside the children. So you have to have, I think, an internal strategy for that vulnerability, for knowing I'm going to make mistakes. Not everything's going to go well. I'm going to misstep. I'm probably going to have to be corrected by people around me. There may be instructional coaches. There may be a director. There may be an educational someone who's going to come and tell me to do things a little differently, how to change or adjust, going to make suggestions. And so to survive your first year, you have to be open to all that.
Yeah. And I think you need to be open to it so that you can learn. But I think you also need to not take it so personally or too much to heart kind of thing too. Because I remember when I was first teaching, one criticism could really get me to be like, I'm not supposed to teach. I'm a horrible teacher. This is terrible. I'm not meant to do this. And I failed the students when really you didn't, but like now if somebody did that, I'm like, okay, and I just roll with it. And I either take the advice and I change, or I'm like, you know what, that's just not who I am. I'll take a little bit of it here and there. And I just am more confident in myself. So, but I remember being very fragile back then, and any little itty bitty piece of what could be constructive criticism. It's not like, like they're trying to hurt you. It's like, no, we want you to improve. I really took it personally and was like, this isn't for me. I must be horrible at this job, and even if they gave me like tons of positive feedback, all I could concentrate on was that negative piece, and so now I can kind of take both, and I, so I probably take more of the positive and be like, oh yeah, there's so much that went well, instead of being like, oh, everything went well, but this one thing went really bad and that ruined the whole thing, so I think you need to not have tough skin, but like realize the difference there, that
you have to see it as a tool to improve. That's the thing. You have to, right? This is when you are observed, when people come in and say, hey, you might want to try this, or I noticed this, or we need you to change this. It's a way for you to learn as a teacher. It's not a personal attack. They're not personally, but you have to be able to separate. And I know how hard that can be. Yes, I know it. None of us like to be critiqued. I still don't like to be critiqued. Right? At the same time, you have to recognize, as someone who's new, that there may be quite a bit of critique. And even those of you who are seasoned in the field, who know what I'm talking about right now, might feel like, especially with all the changes that have happened in early education over the past 5 to 10 years, that there's this constant trying to get you to change or do new things. Again, it's just a means for you to grow based on what we know today. And you have to have that headspace. You have to be able to separate the feeling of personal insult from, this is going to help me grow as a professional.
Yeah.
Right. So you have to be able to, it's almost like putting on that professional cloak. I have my professional cape on when I'm at work. And then when I come home, I can take that off.
Yes.
Right. And this is sort of related to the next piece of advice, which is to find really good mentors. Where we are in New Jersey, there's a whole system. If you're a certified teacher, there's a whole system of mentorship that you have to go through. And that did not exist when I became a certified teacher. When I got my certification, it was like the State Department of Education handed you this piece of paper and said, good luck to you, have fun. And there was no ongoing support at all. School systems today tend to have some ongoing support where you may be assigned a mentor. Yes. Private programs also might say, here's someone who's going to be your mentor to bounce ideas off of. You might have, again, like an educational coach of some kind, even in your private programs, if you work for a private program. And if you don't have any of these, or if you feel like I need more, find yourself a really good mentor, somebody who is well-versed in what you need to know, who gives good, developmentally appropriate, research-based advice, who can help you to step-by-step things.
Yeah, because I remember going through that mentorship because I had been teaching for many, many years, but I then eventually went to a public school. Before that, I was in private settings. And I remember I was assigned a mentor. And my mentor mostly left me alone. I don't know if it's because she's like, well, she knows what she's doing. She's been doing this for years. It's just a different setting. Or if that was just her style. So but I had no choice in who my mentor was. Like the principal or the somebody else chose them, for you based on like maybe your grade level or whatever. And so if you find that the mentor assigned to you might not mesh with you, or maybe their style is just different. Like if you have a hands-off kind of mentor and you need somebody that's more hands-on, there's lots of other people at the school who have knowledge and resources for you. You just have to find them, you know? So try to tap into other people's minds too. You don't have to rely on just one mentor. You could have several mentors.
And one way to figure out who those people are who might be really helpful is you have to be willing to ask for help. Yes. You have to be vulnerable in that way too. You have to be willing to go and say, I'm not sure what to do. First year, I need some help. The great thing about being a first year teacher is you can go, it's my first year. I'm not so sure.
I don't know what I'm doing. You're like, I'm new here. Yeah.
10 years down the road, you can't go to people and go, I'm new here. I don't know. But you can take advantage of that, if it is your first year or two even.
Yeah. And I do find like when you go in, you're like, and you say, hey, I'm new here. People are more than willing to help you. Mm-hmm. But when Alison comes in there, who's been doing this for so long, and you pull the whole like, hi, I'm new here. They're like, get out of here, Alison. So you use it while you can, You
may be new here, but you're not new here.
God. I think you could probably use the I'm new here excuse for like a good 5 years. Because I think I did that. Yes, I do. Because when I moved to a public school, that was new for me. And I remember having questions like, I don't know how to do that. What are you talking about? And I'd be like, I would say that to people all the time. I'm new here. They're like, you worked here since 2016, Alison. I'm like, still, I'm new here and I don't know what we're doing. Because things were different. It was a different setting and the public school did things very, very differently than the private setting I was in. So I had no clue. And it was like a learning process for years. You're not going to figure it all out in your first year either. It's probably going to take you 2 or 3 years to figure out some stuff. And even sometimes 5 years in, something pops up and you're like, well, we've never done this before. I don't know what I'm doing, and just find somebody to go ask. even if it's the principal, just say, hey, I don't know.
Anybody, yep.
Yeah,
Yeah. I wonder if the more experienced, seasoned people are sitting, listening to this right now thinking, can I get away with I'm new here?
Try it.
Let me see if I can get away with it.
At least we'll get a good laugh, and then you could be like, anyway, I still need help. Okay. Anyway, I don't know what I'm doing.
But isn't it true? Like, there are times when something will happen in my family, and let's say one of my children is surprised by it, and I look at them and go, are you new here? So maybe you can. I don't know. Maybe
you might be able to do it.
I don't know. Yeah, you might be able to milk it. The next one, I think people who are more experienced are really going to laugh at, because you absolutely know this to be true.
It's true.
There is a honeymoon period at the beginning of every school year when the children are not yet sure of the boundaries and what the teachers will tolerate and won't tolerate. So they really toe the line for, I would say, about the first 2 to 3 weeks of a school year.
Yeah.
It's like a honeymoon period, right? We're all getting to know each other. We're figuring out our place together. And then all of a sudden one day they come in and there are entirely different people because they have figured it out, or they think they have. They think they have figured out what will the adults tolerate, what won't they tolerate, what can I do here, what can't I do here. Oh, wait, these people aren't so mean. Nothing terrible is going to happen if I make a mistake. So I'm just going to try this thing. Yeah. And so you have to be ready with strategies, things like clearly stated rules and expectations. Not a lot of them, few of them. There's an episode from a while ago about rules and boundaries. Go look for it because it talks about the rules that you need for young children, I think. So, just a few rules, nicely, clearly stated. You have to be ready to reinforce them. Just because you taught them during weeks 1 and 2 doesn't mean you don't have to repeat them consistently. You have to be ready to redirect children. You have to be ready to remind children. You have to be ready to sit and talk with children about their decision-making process, what problems they're having. You're going to have to put all of those strategies into place that you may have learned about classroom management and teaching children behavior. Because don't you feel like, Alice, in the beginning of every school year for the first few weeks, you feel like, I don't need any strategies.
I know. Everything's
children
great.
are unbelievably great.
Yeah, it's like running through a daisy field. You're like, oh, this is great. This is going to be the best year ever.
Like on one of those commercials. One of those commercials for people who need some horrible medication and roll in a field of sunflowers.
Yes, and I feel like it's like every classroom should come with like a narrator or a disclaimer or something like those commercials. Okay, where it's like, yes, everything was fine until, like it was. But I really do and I also feel like that honeymoon period comes at a time where teachers are maybe fresh because they just had the summer off, or they're fresh because they just graduated college and this is their first year, and you're like, this is gonna be wonderful. And then when the same stuff might happen, like say now or like in June, and you're like just burnt out and tired by then, you're like, whatever. You know what I mean? So yeah, I do feel like the beginning of the year you always have like these high hopes, I guess, and you're still kind of riding on those hopes, and you may
reach those goals. You may reach those hopes.
Yeah.
But just know that there's a few weeks there when everybody is behaving as if they were attending the coronation in England. And no, that's not going to last.
Yes.
Okay. All right, just know it and be ready. Just be ready with all sorts of really good developmentally appropriate strategies. Mentors are really good if you need strategies too. And one last piece of advice before we sign off. Draw some boundaries between your personal and professional life. You don't have to think about, talk about, and write about school 24 hours a day. Have conversations with people that have nothing to do with your work so that your mind gets to go to different things. Know that, look, teachers do work at home a good part of the time, but you have to put a limit on it so that there's a balance of your professional and personal life. I think teaching is one of those professions where it's so hard to find that balance and to know when to stop. Even if you're thinking, I know as a teacher, even if I'm thinking like, I'm not going to work today, and then I get some great idea, something comes into my head. I start doing it. So it's one of those, I find teaching to be one of those professions that it's hard to put down. It's hard to put it on the shelf because these children, they need us and they matter so much. And we're in it because we care so much.
Yeah.
That said, you need to have a separate times when you're not talking about it, you're not doing it. You are with other people talking about other things and you're taking time for yourself.
Yeah, I think this is
Right.
like, remember that you are a person outside of your
Right.
school and outside of your teaching profession. That's not the entirety of who you are. It's just a part of
That's
who you
right.
are.
It's not the entirety of who you are.
So remember that, because it can be hard and it's easy to get wrapped up in that, like this identity of you as a teacher is not your entire identity. But I do know a lot
That's
of people
right.
who thrive on that identity where they, but then it's like you need to take a break from it or you will burn out really fast.
Everyone needs to do other things. So make sure you
Yeah.
carve out time for that.
Yeah.
Okay, preschool peeps, we're running out of time. So here's the thing. Hopefully it helped you if you have been in the field for a while. And hopefully you will pass it on to the new people that you're going to encounter. Keep this episode handy for the people who may be newer in your programs this school year.
Yeah.
And any friends and relatives you may have who are starting off. All right. We will catch you next time on the podcast.
Hi, peeps.